and our audience members and our county government officials. We thank you that we're able to give back just a little to this wonderful place that we live, play, and work. And Lord, we ask your blessings and your guidance on our business today. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Now we will call the meeting to order. All right, first order of business is the approval of the minutes from Thursday, May 12th. Did anyone have any corrections or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve
Second.
as presented.
Thank you. Second. Push, there you go.
I second it.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. All right, KEDCO update. Mr. Teo, you are up.
Good afternoon, Redevelopment Commission members. Really, so two updates today, which are our projects to ask the commission to consider supporting, being part of, participating in going forward. The first, I know we've talked about a few times over the years, is really gets into our housing initiative and the South Shore Villages project. And the second then is a continuation of a discussion, really goes back to December of last year, around finding some areas that already have existing TIF districts in place to focus on, I think that the term from the statute is to investigate for redevelopment going forward. And so if I can get rolling on that, the first item then is the South Shore Villages project. Jeff Dyson, one of the owners, one of the developers, is here with us in case there are questions he can help with. Really, though, the request, the ask of us as a community is to support redevelopment of that project. It's a transformative project for the northern part of the county. Mixed-use development, which means different kinds of uses, could be residential, single-family, apartments, office, retail, means more complexity, means more has to happen up front to get it to where I would call it the shovel-ready status, and get it a lot closer or even into the swim lane of Redevelopment Commission having a role to help get the property ready, help support, provide what you might call a public-private partnership between the community, developers, to move that forward. And so really looking for whether the commission would begin to some of the investigations, the planning work around getting the site ready, if it's roads, sewer, other infrastructure, getting the site leveled, any of that planning work. And certainly I've had experience doing that before. In other areas it could lead to an industrial park. In this area it's taking that same skill set and looking at how we can use that to help provide a catalyst for a development that's very, again, large-scale development, bigger than I think any one entity can take on. So how do we help put the right partners together and create the momentum to see that develop sooner and see it meet the highest and best use as far as potential, again, as that catalyst for the northern part of the county. So that's the first project. That's probably our nearest term need, most urgent, most important, is to help see how we can work together with the developers in the county to move that forward. As a reminder, that South Shore Villages area is in the unincorporated county jurisdiction by a lot, by a couple miles. So it certainly would be within the scope of this commission to be involved. And again, with the needs we're talking about, certainly fit within the purpose and the focus of the Redevelopment Commission. I'm going to take a breath, see what kind of questions, discussion might be.
Yes. Okay, so that is not currently in a TIF district?
Correct.
Okay.
It's not.
All right, and what do you envision for this project at the end of the day?
Jeff?
Yes, sir, it is for you. It is for you, Mr. Developer.
First of all, thank you for allowing me to talk to you guys. And before I talk about South Shore, I just want to say thank you for the prayer before the meeting, because that in today's society is not normal, and I applaud that. So thank you. So my business partner and I decided that we wanted to put South Shore together as a community project to benefit the community as a whole. The MO behind the whole thing is live, work, play. We wanted to create an opportunity for housing, because there is a huge housing need in the community. Like Alan said, between single-family homes, apartments, whether it be multifamily. We also have a need for bringing or integrating the youth. So we have dedicated 20 acres of the overall property to Lakeland Youth Center. They're going to be working with Boys and Girls Club to also create a facility for after-school activities and youth activities on the property. We're also integrating other parts of the community such as WACF, the trails. We'd like to have walking trails and have beautification through the property. And then the final aspect of it is the commercial aspect where we can incorporate whether it's boutique shopping, whether it's professional services. Those are still yet to be seen through whether it's developers or other people who have shared vision for the overall property. So what we started out to create was to create the vision of this is a thing that we want to basically build up the community with bringing more people into the area, but also a place where a lot of people could live close to work, do things within walking distance, and have things to do that were in Syracuse or in the Wawasee area.
Okay, and so to echo Alan's comments, he said that this is, of the three things that you're going to present today, your nearest term need in time-wise is what you're saying. And then, so what would you envision if we were to partner with you to help with this? What are you thinking we could bring to the table?
Well, and so yes, I was nodding along, but yes, it is the nearest term, most urgent project, so has the most impact, again, as being a transformative project. In terms of what the partnership could look like, really from the most traditional role of redevelopment would be, I think, as alluded, create the TIF area, put together a TIF plan, and look for how we can work together on some of those upfront needs around site development and hard infrastructure, sewer, roads, et cetera, that really help to defray, and there's a lot of risk in this project, help to defray some of that upfront risk, help to create more of that shared risk so we can then focus on getting the other partners engaged, getting them on their way, and ideally seeing the whole project come together a lot sooner.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, you have a partner that's interested in the housing side. Did I heard that rumor somewhere?
Yes, we've spoken with a number of different developers for different parts of the project. Part of, I'm brand new at this. I sold my company and we bought the land and we said, let's figure out what to do.
Wow.
So that was sort of the, hey, let's figure this out as we go. So I'm here as, hey, Alan, come help out. Let's see see how we can all work together. So we've already spoken with a residential developer. We've had a number of other residential developers who have reached out to us and said, hey, if anything falls through or if whatever if something happens, we're ready to step in and help out. We've also spoken with some commercial developers who have interest in the commercial aspect, others with whether it be apartments or senior living. A lot of folks have heard about the vision and seen the information that's been released on the project, and now we're starting to get interest in, hey, if you need assistance with this, or you need a developer for this portion, then, we're available. And I guess the challenge for myself and my business partner is, like I said, we're brand new at this. So we're just trying to figure it out and navigate, and we're leaning on Alan to say, hey, look, this is the process. These are the steps. So, a lot of the questions that you might have, I'm going to defer to Alan because he knows so much better than we do.
Okay, so if we ask for an approximate price tag, do you have any idea, even ballpark, what you're talking? Okay, let's first start with creating the TIF district. Do you have any idea what that costs? I'm looking at Michelle, our wonderful auditor. I have no idea. It's been so long since one has been created. No clue.
Are we talking a residential tech or are we talking
I think it could be a combination of residential and commercial. So that'd be a first decision. The decision tree, that's one of the first things. Is it one or the other or both? I don't know.
And well, when you say both, then are you is there a vision on where you're drawing this? Is it just this development? Is it outside of this? Is it?
that's part of the process. Again, of another reason why to have redevelopment involved is to make sure we do look at the impact of this kind of projects, and does it make sense to expand beyond the 110-ish acres to include other areas? I don't know. I'm not saying there's no map that shows any kind of future expansion. But in terms of the kind of steps involved to create a TIF area, I mean, you've got legal fees to get through the approval process, working with GIS to develop, here's the map, working with financial analyst Baker Tilly to put together a TIF plan, she has some estimates of future TIF generation.
Or another company. Go ahead. I just had to throw that in there.
And then we can work with the Development Commission on what are the things we're trying to fund, and then ideally work with engineering. And some of that's already conceptually been started, worked with engineering to get some initial budgets. We have some budgets, they're going to be dated from when we started looking at the project years ago.
Okay.
So we know the variables. In terms of the price tag, I hate to put a number, maybe 25 to 50,000
Okay.
of cost to get all the pieces in place. Could be way low, way high. But there's work to do. We know what to do, and it does follow. So Adam asked about residential TIF. We have seen residential TIF come together in a few other parts of the county. We know how important that's been to a few other projects, and also how it can connect, with commercial TIFs, and each plays a different part. So.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Is there more costs associated with a different TIF district if it's residential versus commercial?
I don't believe so. I mean, other than there's the extra steps and the analysis side of it, making sure it meets that.
Adam, you
housing
need to speak
requirements.
into your mic.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, Michelle. I mean, from a standpoint of making sure all the requirements are met, which I think some of those actually were lifted. I haven't looked at it lately, but I think July 1st that statute changed. And then obviously you have the extra step of approval by the school board. That will have to be with the residential that you don't have with commercial. Is that gone?
Oh, yeah, right.
I think it's still there, but I mean, again, these are
all
timeline.
yeah.
These are adding a couple meetings into a timeline, maybe one or two resolutions into a timeline.
Well, I guess that was going to be my question, was the idea of like, what is the timeline here? Because if we go from, because generally we're looking from an assessed value as of January 1st of the given year where the TIF is set up. So are we looking at 2023? And
I think in fairness, we're looking at having the pieces in place so that you can form a TIF yet this calendar year to capture the bare land kind of value. And then have everything in place so we can begin the project for spring 2023. I mean, but again, another variable is there a logic to the waiting to form it January 1 of 23? There may be. We
Yeah,
gotta
that's
get around the
a
table
lot.
and think through that.
yeah. So, I don't know if they're my questions or the commission's questions, but so are these county maintained roads that you're
They
foreseeing?
would be,
Okay, so we're putting in some infrastructure there. And then it's all on sewer and water, or what's it on?
there's sewer line along 13. There's no water in proximity.
No water up there, okay. I'm just not that familiar with that area.
And, we've looked into the sewer capacity, able to support the kind of development we're talking about.
Okay, so the capacity is there for the sewer.
Certainly, we're not committing that sewer district anything, just saying the partnership needs
Right,
to work with
right.
them.
Right, which we can't commit anybody to anything.
No,
But water, would that be Indiana American Water, or would it be another water provider? I'm not familiar either with that
wells.
area.
It would be
Wells.
wells.
It would
At
all be
this- At
wells?
this point in time, it would be wells.
Okay.
The closest water would be from the city of Syracuse, and it's
a
a mile
long
and a half to
haul.
2 miles.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
major infrastructure
yeah.
to get water out there.
And there's another reason why Alan knows how I feel about doing the infrastructure and then having a city take it over, because then we lose revenue, so.
No,
yeah.
not a city, a private entity, yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming that.
You
Syracuse
have
is in
pretty much the area that you want to develop as residential pretty much defined, at least at this moment, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's just the definition of the remaining grounds, with the exception of the 20 acres that you've already decided is going to go to Lakeland Youth Center?
Yes, that's a good question, and yes, that's correct.
Just making sure okay.
Yes.
And-
But with the TIF being both, you would actually just draw the whole area in.
Right.
Because it's gonna capture all the increment in
Right.
addition to the residential.
At this point in time, we are still the exclusive owners of the entire property, even though we've had the discussions and we have the interest from whether it's a developer or Lakeland Youth Center. So part of the reason for me being here is asking a question, what do we need to do so we don't go ahead and sell the property and now it increases the value of the land? Or we split it up and now we can't do something with the TIF because, oh, if we had this conversation before you sold it, it would be different. So part of this is a learning process for myself and,
And us, just being completely honest here. We've never created a TIF district. We've talked about including some ground to an adjoining TIF district, but that hasn't moved either because there's no need at this point. But, so the first thing, I guess, that we would need to do, I'm looking at Michelle for verification, would be to have Adam research.
Well, I just have one more quick question.
Okay.
So at the end of this, when you're looking at bonding for the improvements required, what is the amount of that bond that you're gonna look for?
That's TBD based on the infrastructure estimates, how much, once we calculate how much property taxes generated, how much costs are, how
Do you
much
have any ballpark? If, I mean, we're talking 10 million?
less, it'd be more in order of like 2 to 3 million. Again, it's just rough order of magnitude. So that, again, the project is to, yes, let's go forward on, toward forming the TIF, doing the analysis, coming back with the bid proposals to form a TIF in this area, to fund these, infrastructure needs, and we know it's gonna generate this increment, and here's how we propose financing it. Ideas to bring all that to the commission. Have a
Because
plan ready to go.
to some extent, the one impacts the other. As far as once the TIF is drawn and we kind of have an estimate on what kind of increment it's gonna be able to, or revenue it's gonna be able to generate, then that helps with the bond,
And that
question.
basically helps us through that whole process.
Exactly,
So, all that
exactly.
upfront analysis, and then, they.
Yeah.
So I think you guys deciding if you want to go forward with entertaining this idea and then figuring out which consultant that you would want to work with to then start the ball rolling. You have a pretty tight window if you're wanting to capture and be at the January 1, 2022 for your AV, because this has to be done and recorded by December 31st of this year. So since this is the very first conversation, you have a very tight timeline, because as part of this, in the end, bonds are also going to need to be sold. And like I said, that you got a short timeline if you're wanting to.
Your mindset, though, is the bond is step two,
Yes. So
Right.
Step one is
Just form the
area.
TIF,
Step two is.
then utilize the TIF to secure the bond.
Right.
And so just as a quick reminder, on forming the TIF, starts here, redevelopment commission, goes to plan commission, commissioners, back to redevelopment. So yes, there's gotta hit the wickets the right order, but,
Well, and throw in the school district in there too.
and if it's
Yeah.
if it's residential TIF, yes, there's a school board.
And the council, if we want to pay the bills when they come in.
That's part two.
Yeah, okay.
From a standpoint, though, of Baker Tilly and their analysis of it, or whoever we use, it's one parcel, really. And then, you know what I mean, from that vantage point, it's different than drawing something that's
And we know the
got
potential
100 and
uses,
some odd
you know,
parcels in it, like somebody else might have done.
Yeah, and we know the potential uses, we know the magnitude numbers,
Yep.
kind of roughly numbers of homes, we can estimate AVs of the homes,
Yeah.
the other uses. We can give Baker Tilly all they need to run their analysis, they're gonna discount it, give us some ideas as far as here's your TIF generation, if it's commercial or residential or both. And then, then we have to look at the same time, develop our infrastructure proposal as far as cost estimates and see, how do they match up? What can we do? And even does there need to be some phasing on how the project even goes forward based on the timing, right? That's what we all work together on, is helping take something that's bigger than any one group can really figure out and work on it.
Since we have Michelle here through the end of the year, much to my dismay, who would fund this?
Well, it would be funded through those revenues that would be collected through this.
So the county would basically allow us to utilize the money and then pay it back with the TIF income.
That's what we've done in the past.
Okay. And we don't do bonds, correct?
We do.
We do
Yes,
bonds.
and the TIF district, I'm sorry, I know I'm not being recorded because I'm not in the mic, and that's what I tell everybody to do. So when you're looking at your spreadsheets that I've given you
Yes.
for your TIFs, so the two TIFs that have debt are the TIF districts that we have bonded. So that's why those are the ones that we owe the bond bank. So it has, I mean, we have developed TIFs. It has been several years since we created a new TIF. But yes, bonding will be part of that process because they'll need that cash outlay to make those improvements for infrastructure so we can build the homes, so we can collect the TIF dollars.
Okay, and then I thought that the two TIFs we have with outstanding debt, that they owned those bonds.
Well,
We
that's
do not
part of the
own bonds.
conversation as far as when we start establishing those TIF is
Okay.
in that bond process, who is securing those bonds?
There you
Because
go.
you are correct, in these two instances, for the bonds that we have, those companies actually bought those bonds, so there's no liability on the county side. If the revenues do not come in, then the county having to turn around and make those bond payments to make them good. But that is, those details will need to be discussed as we start that bonding process.
But it wouldn't necessarily have to be like that.
It does not have to be like that, but you would want to know
council-
that before you
Right.
got to the end, because we have had TIF districts before, and, I mean, it's public knowledge, those two TIF districts that have debt, they are not currently collecting enough money to pay their bond, and their shortfalls, which those companies have to turn around and basically eat that
Right.
difference. Whereas, in the early 2000s, we had a TIF district that the county was liable for. And when those revenues were deficient, the county general, or I believe the edit fund at that point, had to pay off that bond because we didn't have enough revenue. So that is a risk that we take. And I think they said this is, a new project. It's a kind of a risky project, at least in the initial stages. And that's just something you have to take into consideration if the county wants to take on that liability, which is why it starts with the redevelopment commission, goes to area plan, council commissioners, back to the redevelopment commission. So you're the first say, you're the last say. And I believe any of those boards can say no at any time within that process as those details and particulars come out.
Okay. Have you had the pleasure of meeting Michelle Puckett, our auditor extraordinaire,
Oh, please.
who's terming out
I am
December
just- I am
31st?
just here.
Much to my dismay, you're just here. You're so sweet. Okay, so remind me of your name. What, your name?
Jeff Dyson,
Jeff Dyson, as in like D-Y-S-O-N?
as in the vacuum,
Ooh,
yes.
do you know those people?
I do not. I wish
Bummer.
I did, because this project would be paid for right now.
Yes. That's what I'm thinking. You don't need us. Okay, so I guess at this point, what we would need, if the redevelopment commission wanted to move forward in at least investigating what this would entail to create a TIF district, incorporating all of the ground that you own in that unit as one, to make, that way you wouldn't be piecemealed. I like that idea. I think that's a really good suggestion, Adam.
Would you have to have a separate one for the residential TIF or not?
No,
Were those going to be separate?
no.
No?
Basically, if you do the residential can capture the commercial and the industrial increment as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's kind of it's either an ordinary TIF or it's a residential. And it's just a residential and it captures the ordinary TIF dollars too.
Okay.
Is my understanding.
Okay.
Like, I've done one.
Yes. You've done one. You're experienced.
I'm not gonna pretend
More
that.
than we have right here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess at this point,
Well, I wasn't done with questions for Michelle.
please.
Do you want to take the stand?
Ooh.
Yes, sir.
Well, no, you didn't, I don't think you answered when Joni asked originally, do you concur with the cost? Do you recall our most recent tips that were created? Does that seem
It has been so long ago since we established a TIF, and I do believe those fees are going to be dependent on the project. If it is a $2 million project, if it's one parcel, depending on the complexity. I do know, yes, the residential has more requirements than a commercial, so there may be a few extra steps, but I would think since we're talking 2 to 3 million, it's one parcel. I believe when we did Dreyfus, and that was 15 years ago, maybe, I mean, we were $200,000 in attorney fees, but that was a pretty expansive project. But I don't have a current one of this scale to really do that comparison with.
That probably included bond.
Yes, and that
Yes.
included,
Yeah,
that included the
yeah.
bond and the whole entire project
Yes.
beginning to end,
That's what attorney.
which is why Dreyfus was so much more.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that the timeframe will be tight. In an ideal situation, how much time is typically needed based on your remembrance?
Yes, it depends on the motivation behind the project and the vendor that we work with and their workload. This, since it is a simpler project, if it is just one parcel at this point and will be platted out at a later time, you know, the complexity is a lot less than some of the other ones that we have gone into. So, you know, the legal description's done, the scale of work with just having, you know, one owner, the school board will be an added hurdle that we haven't experienced here on the county level. But if you're highly motivated to get this done, you know, 5.5 months, it really will depend on the vendor that you choose to go forward, whether it's Baker Tilly or somebody else, and seeing what their availability is, because there's a lot of work to get it done. But the final acceptance by the Redevelopment Commission has to happen before December 31st in order for us to capture that assessed value as January 1. And typically when we do TIFs, depending on the timeline, what we did with Dreyfus is we had concurrent meetings. So we would have the Redevelopment Commission meet, make their decision, close, and then we had the council and commissioners, and then we could have, did I say redevelopment or area plan? I meant area plan first.
right.
And then the council commissioners, then redevelopment. So we can schedule meetings kind of concurrent. We don't have to fit them into the regular monthly or bi-monthly schedule that we meet. So that is something that we could do to save us on time as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So it is doable. It isn't one of those things where it's like, oh, there's no way you're ever going to get it done.
Again, I would say the first step is talking to that
Right.
vendor and
Yeah.
having them take a look at the project
Okay.
and giving us a timeline, because all of those legal documents they would be preparing.
Okay.
So do we need to give Baker Tilly or whoever that vendor is our intended scope of that project so that they can then run the
Yes.
numbers and so on and so forth? Or do we say, you know, this is what we're trying to accomplish, you tell us what the most ideal proposal would be? Because the question that I was going to ask, and maybe better asked or answered by Alan, I don't know, are there other projects in the Syracuse area, since we don't do TIFs very often and because they're costly to set up, are there other projects that we should be aware of that maybe could be incorporated in this new TIF district that may expand beyond what's being proposed just for the South Shore project?
We can certainly, talk with the other stakeholders, and schools, if we're going residential TIF as a stakeholder, sewer districts, and find out if there are other things that would create a rationale to expand the area. You can also create the area and create the allocation where you're collecting money separately, as different geographies. But I think it gets to, there's a couple different timelines. There's a timeline to form the TIF, which, it's like 90 days-ish, timelines to then design and get numbers ready for a project, timelines to issue bonds.
Right.
And those are not necessarily, don't need to be all the same timeline. That we would even have, honestly, we would have the opportunity if a year down the road, there is a project that would make it worthwhile to expand that TIF area, let's expand it. Go through the same process, same 90 to 120 days, expand the TIF area, update the TIF plan. We'd have that flexibility.
So it seemed to me that focusing on this particular piece alone to start the TIF might be the best scenario than to try and look to see if there were
Yeah.
I just wanted.
connecting or adjoining?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to delay anything to try to capture what we don't know. I just wanted to make sure if there
Oh.
was something that was known or even anticipated, so that we don't have to incur all of the same costs and time and so forth. You know, let's make sure we're capturing everything that's known or anticipated the first go-round, as long as it didn't create unnecessary delays. That's all I was wanting to.
Yeah.
And I don't know, correct me if I'm missing something, but as far as hitting that January 1st timeline, on this particular parcel, are we really gonna see that much of an incremental difference between January of '22 and January of '23? He's smiling like he might be doing some work out there.
Really just need to look at where it's assessed currently. I mean,
Right, you see what I'm saying? I like the idea of trying to
That's
get it in by
that's
the
a
end of the
very
year.
good question, but I would ask you, what was the value of your house 6 months ago?
Wow.
And what's the value of your
It's still
house
going up.
today?
Right.
So if we're going to do a year to year, where it's January 1 to January 1, I don't know if what you're saying is it goes back to January 1 of 2022.
Yes.
If so, the land value is absolutely cheaper 6 months ago than it will be in.
Oh, I don't doubt that at all, but I think what we're talking about when we're talking about increment, going from bare land to however many hundred homes, that's the significant
Sure.
increase that I'm concerned
Gotcha.
about. Right, and we've seen that in other areas where we're drawing the district or the TIF area while homes are being built. So we don't,
Okay,
you know
so
what I
I'm
mean?
with you.
So we don't want January 1 of next year, we want January 1 of the previous
year,
year.
yeah.
Right. So that's all I was kind of posing. It
Jeff,
wasn't necessarily
Jeff, while you're
saying
at the
it wasn't going
microphone,
up.
I have a question.
Yes,
You are Jeff?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Have you had any discussion with the state or the county as far as highway? I mean, you're talking about a pretty big project as far as it's going to change the traffic pattern there. Is that been discussed?
We've had, I know Alan has reached out to MACOG to try to get some traffic studies. That was something that NDOT was requiring in order to get the road cuts, to determine where those were going to be. I don't know, Alan would be able to speak better on whether or not where those traffic studies have been done. We're also working with the engineers right now to determine, there's actually going to be 3 distinct entrances, one on the very north side, which doesn't exist yet, one on the south side, which doesn't exist yet, and then there's one that's going to be in the middle. Right now, there's 2 or 3 existing openings to get into the parking lot of the existing property, and we're trying to determine if we use one of those or we close those off and move it and make a new road cut that's a little bit more safe because of, it's right around that curve. So I guess the long way to answer your question is, yes, we've reached out and we've had some initial discussions, but we're not at the point where we can stand here and tell you, this is the traffic count, this is the impact that it will have. We're not at that point yet.
And I would also encourage on that point, that's a great question to ask and nothing wrong asking that. But remember, part of this process will be them going to the plan commission
Right.
to actually get all this replatted and drawn out to the specs with the county and everything. So that's, a fine question, but not necessarily our primary concern here. We've got plenty of other people that'll be looking over their shoulder from the county perspective to make sure those things are done right and those things are considered.
And, okay. Do you feel, 2 things. One, can we do a request for quote to find out what it would cost to create the TIF district? And do you think it's out of the scope of your experience
Oh, as far
level?
as my stuff?
Yes.
I would be happy to work along with a Baker Tilly or someone of that equivalent to
Okay.
get this done,
Then can we
from
do?
that standpoint. I'm not gonna be your bond counsel for when it comes
Right.
time to do all that.
Right.
But from that vantage point,
You don't want to be
yeah.
bond counsel? Okay.
question I would have then is, does the county have an open agreement with Baker Tilly that could cover this? Or is
No.
that separate
Separate.
agreements and then is
I
there
have
a
no idea.
requirement to go to 3
I,
proposals, or how does that work?
Marcia?
We can help with that.
What's the minimum requirement for getting quotes for a project? Michelle, did you want to say something? No. You're just adjusting? Okay, I wasn't sure if you were getting up. Okay, we do have someone who came to the county and did a proposal on all kinds of services they offer, that they've been around 14, 15 years, and they really are knowledgeable about TIFs because someone drilled them and did a real good job of checking out to see if they actually knew what they were talking about. And I'm very impressed with the level of work that they offered and what they showed us that they can accomplish. Not that that rules anyone out, but I would like to have more than one quote, just so that, and I would also like, in my opinion, the Redevelopment Commission, you, your other partner, and you to agree on X company. And we all know Baker Tilly has a great reputation. These people also have a great reputation. So I think that would be beneficial, but so to start with, I guess we need to decide as a redevelopment commission whether we're interested in starting the process to see what the cost would be to create this TIF district and to get help to do this, because, I mean, Adam, you will help us, but it will be alongside a vendor that specializes in this, correct?
Well, and understand, these vendors aren't necessarily they're your financial advisors, and they're coming up with the financial plan and all that kind of stuff. That has nothing to do with the legal side of things. So, but
Okay.
yeah, they're doing these on a daily basis and all across the state, and should be well-versed and, assisting local council and, making sure that everything's met and done.
Yes, sir.
I think the third leg of the stool would be to find, legal, financial analysis, engineering, that will need to be developing those cost estimates at the same time. So we know, okay, if Baker Tilly or whomever is doing their analysis and this is a TIF generated, how does that match up with what we're seeing as far as cost estimates for the proposed project?
And you said you're already working with an engineering firm?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do we need to cover any other base?
What, if we go out to bid, what's the time frame that's typically required or allotted for response? I'm just wondering how that would impact.
It has to be advertised. Correct, Marcia? We would need to advertise that, so it's usually at least 2 weeks from the date of advertisement to get to the next meeting, to be able to receive and open those bids.
I'm encouraged by what you said earlier, though, that we could schedule.
Back to back to back?
And I
Yeah.
would say just be open for your schedule for meetings,
Yeah.
because typically you only meet every other month.
Right.
And I would just need to advertise additional meetings in that time.
Right. But in our commitment, when we went to every other, was that if there was a need to meet more regularly, that we would. But I want to be the county that is responsive to these types of projects. And so I would love to see us do something like that if we are up against a tight timeline. So if you need I'm not sure what I'm motioning for, other than my support that we move the ball down the field as the redevelopment commission.
To at least start the process of
Start the
finding out what the
investigation?
cost will be before we make a final decision. Is that, Adam?
So,
You guys make that decision where you want to go.
so
So you're making a motion
a motion to
to,
basically to put the TIF district out to bid.
I don't know if I'd word it quite like that. You're
Well,
just
I'm not-
looking
yeah.
for getting, acquiring, professional assistance with regard to, I don't know, call them financial advisors, with assisting the analysis and the establishment of the TIF.
say that again, professional assistance. Did you get that,
You can only
Michelle?
say it once.
Oh, you don't repeat?
No.
Man, we need somebody who's a
getting-
repeater.
Getting quotes, for the professional services for financial analysis and establishment of a residential TIF.
Okay. So we have a
Does that
motion.
work, Alan? Does that make sense?
Yes, I'll make a motion.
We have a
to-
motion.
I'll second.
Okay, Mike, how do you feel about this? Okay, I'm just asking, okay, so, all right. So all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, same sign. There you go, gentlemen. Welcome. We'll be in partnership. This will be fun.
This would be exciting.
We need to exchange phone numbers, sir, before you leave. Alan, did you have anything else to say? Because the
does.
answer is going to be no, whatever it is.
He does, actually.
Let's go one thing at a time. How about that? Is it
okay.
okay? Is it okay if we talk about one project here?
Okay, I thought we did good on that one.
That's
Moving
good.
on.
No, appreciate, and again, I know there's a lot to dig into here, so I appreciate the commission's support. We certainly understand, how the management going forward, keep all of us together, work through some of these taskers to get proposals to help the commission, get back together as needed for meetings, and I think we've got a great team in place here to help support that.
All right, what else did you want to say?
That's all.
Oh, that's your entire report?
Yeah, I think we'll hold on the other projects, and that was
Okay.
really it, just to say, hey,
Thank you.
we've got some good things, opportunities, let's start to pull some of those down, and I know you all are anxious to get to work, so.
Yes, one at a time.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm only good at one at a time when it's this complicated
Let
sometimes.
let me ask this then, Alan. We just got done saying that if we need to meet more regularly than every other month, if there are projects that warrant the commission's time, that we would do that. Do you have other, if you're not going to bring up the other two items that you had started with, are there things that we need to be responsive to in the subsequent month?
I think if we could get some momentum with this one, it wouldn't be bad to then move to the other two projects, which are looking at that other two TIF areas, the Leesburg TIF and the True Point TIFs. I think even just what we learn as far as how this comes together with who needs to be involved, what are the tasks, that'll help even with the decision-making on the other two. So I think it's worth the investment, say, let's start there, and then even if it's next month after, come back, we'll be well
Okay.
positioned. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Alan. Okay, so next on our agenda is a TIF review, and we are tasked with reviewing the TIF for Leesburg first and then True Point. And we've all received the information on both of the TIFs, along with maps. Thank you, Michelle. All right, so we need to determine for both TIFs, Commission's budget for tax increment revenues collected within each allocation area. And in Leesburg, it looks like right now we have positive $68,345.47. Our last time that we reviewed this, we said that we were going to take the tax increment revenues collected, and evidently a loan was paid off for the larger sewer pipe already. And then we were anticipating $30,000 to $40,000, and we have a little over $60,000. We thought the long-term plan at that point was for housing and infrastructure. And we thought the impact of the allocation area on the overlapping taxing units would be approximately $30,000. So, commission members, do you have any comments on what, number one, is no longer an issue? Thank goodness we got that paid off, so that's good. So now all of the money coming in will go straight to keep within that allocation area to spend as we see fit. So do we have a plan of anything we want to see in that area of Leesburg?
Well, I think that was,
One of the other things Alan was going to talk about.
right, exactly. And I think it maybe, Alan, if you want to just speak to it, but we were looking potentially at industrial development.
Okay, I'm back. So
Yeah, okay.
that Leesburg TIF area, with the location, proximity to other areas, the highway access and the sewer, I mean, again, would be an area for the commission to investigate for what other kinds of development might make sense. And the investigation there, I mean, let's take a step back even from South Shore Village. They have a concept of what kinds of development and where on the property. Take a step back, would the commission want to look at what kinds of developments where, just to see if it's even worth taking any further action on? But again, that would fit in, really the commission's role is investigating sites for development or redevelopment. And that might be more working with, all of us working together, but finding maybe an engineering firm that could help us provide some analysis, some feasibility on that.
So potentially creating a vision for this.
Precisely.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, then the long-term plan would be, or I guess the short-term plan would be to examine and create a vision for this TIF district?
Correct.
For the area
Right.
adjacent to the TIF district, correct?
So I would
Because
say.
I
yeah.
thought, yeah, we have a map. Let me toss you my map. I thought that we were talking about the property that Levi Lee Road. Are we talking about property that's already included in the TIF?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think the,
Oops, I'm sorry.
it certainly would be property in the TIF area.
Okay.
I think the investigation could look at, do you want to expand that TIF area? Is there a rationale to do so? There may not be, but at least to, as part of the project, I would call this, assessing the TIF plan. There's an existing plan of how the dollars start to be used. Hey, taking the time to assess it, look at, should it be updated? And as part of updating that TIF plan of how to use the dollars, are any changes to the geography, warranted?
Okay,
So again, just for my benefit, if it's not needed by others, but if we were to engage an engineering firm, are we providing the scope? So we'd go out and look at it, talk to stakeholders, and then when we engage the engineering firm, say, this is what we're thinking of, these are areas that we have deficiencies, or do we go to the engineering firm and say, come back to us with a plan and wow us?
And you could do either. My preference would be to do more of the former, where we take time to look at what do we think are the assets to build on, what do we think our needs are in the community, who can we talk to understand some of that, and provide as much guidance as possible.
I'm sure that'd be more cost effective too.
much more question. I'm into that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we changed number 2, number 1 is null and void.
Right.
But if we, actually, no, number 1 is completed. That's a better way of saying that. Number 2, if we change that to examine and create a vision for the current TIF area, including expansion possibilities.
Right.
Yep, okay. And then number 3, would the taxing impact allocation change, Michelle? It's right now approximately 30,000.
I think looking at the estimates is probably more like 50,000.
Okay. Thank you. So we would read number 3 to read 50,000. We're doing good. We're moving things on here. I like this. Okay. Next, True Point.
Do we need a motion?
Oh, I'm
to
sorry.
that First,
Do you want them separate? Thank you. Motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the edits to the Leesburg TIF.
Second?
Second.
Thanks, Mike. All right, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Okay, very good. All right, second up, True Point. Again, True Point, the last time we reviewed it, Commission's budget for tax increment revenues collected within the allocation area is, we didn't have a budget. Long-term plan, True Point continues to pay down the bond bank, which True Point's debt at this point in time is a little under $500,000, $545,343.01. And there is no impact on the allocation area because they're still paying back a bond. Is that a good summation? So I don't see any need to change anything on this one. Does anybody else? We want to pay back the bond. It's always a good thing when people pay back bonds. Okay? So if not, I'd entertain a motion to,
I'll make a motion that the True Point TIF, what are we calling it?
2-point TIF.
Well, the review or
Oh.
the state or the intended purpose of the TIF would remain unchanged.
There you go.
Second.
Thank you. All right. All those in favor? Does anybody have any comments first, I guess we should ask? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Okay, motion passed. Thank you. All right. Next. Do we have any further business to come before the Redevelopment Commission? Short of thanking you for attending today, thank you, press, for being here, and thank you, young people. It's very nice to see young people in this courtroom. It's a welcome thing. So, and thanks for being engaged in our community. Thanks for all your help, Michelle. We couldn't do it without you. On that motion, do you have anything for us?
Alan and I had lunch not long ago on unrelated business. However, we veered into redevelopment. And one of the things that we were discussing was, I'm going to call it an ad hoc committee within the commission to explore, right, some of the options that we may have in some of our TIF districts. Is that what you want to come to, do you want to speak to that at our next meeting, or do you want to share that now?
Well, I mean, that really, the discussion about looking at specific TIF areas is beginning to pull those down. And you might even identify or self-nominate, are there one or two commission members that want to take responsibility for looking at, different areas? Even are there one or two people that would like to be part of this South Shore project specifically, to be able to focus in on that on behalf of the commission and then report back to the commission? I think it's something, Joni, this is one of your ideas, right? Is to really then to pull that down. So I just want to bring that back to the forefront.
Yeah, and my thought, for what it's worth, was just to actually claim a TIF district, that you will do the research on it, figure out what you think a good use would be for it. And if, I'm not sure, I don't understand soils. My husband farms, he gets it, I don't. I think it's all dirt. But there's a huge difference between some of it. So, but, it's kind of complicated, but at least to understand what its use is, what its use could be. And I don't know if that's just dreaming, because possibilities are not always reality, as we all know. As long as there are no more than 2 commission members involved in anything, we're fine, open door law. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think at the least we should maybe take the 2 that could potentially have some impact, the Leesburg and the True Point. There's some thought process behind that one that could be, so if we just tackled those
Those 2.
2 rather than trying to tackle all of them.
You said Leesburg and what?
True Point. Even though True Point is paying down bonds, there's some adjacent land that, with a rail road that goes through it, that could provide expansion areas and some good development within the county.
Maybe.
Possibly.
Maybe.
Everything's possible. Nothing is
Anything's
probable.
possible, right?
Yeah.
Had you not made that comment, I would have thought that Leesburg, since we already know that may have some of the more immediate opportunities, and it also has a positive balance, that if we had 2 commission members working on that, probably in concert with Alan, and even just figuring out, okay, so what does that look like? Because if we just put it in our notes that we're going to possibly engage an engineering firm, but we're not going to do that until we do our due diligence. So Leesburg would be one that I would think that we'd want to assign 2 individuals. And then South Shore, because obviously there's going to be a tremendous learning curve and then additional time spent on that. So while True Point may be a very valid TIF to look at, with our resources, I'm wondering if we would select those that are more pressing.
Okay.
Well, True Point could end up being more pressing.
Well, and I love the idea of having 2 commission members.
Yeah,
But right now we have none, so I mean, even if we assigned a single commission member,
So which one are you volunteering for? I'll volunteer for South Shore. What do you want?
well, now, again, Dan's not here, but being
I
that
know.
Dan's in Webster, I'd love to see him with a project that was more in his
South
backyard.
Shore? Okay, so Dan and I could do South Shore.
well, we're all gonna end up working on that one, aren't we?
Well,
Eventually,
but not to the same degree maybe as those that are the point commission.
Right. Do you want Leesburg?
I'll do Leesburg.
Mike? Which one do you want? One unspoken so far?
You want to work with Leesburg with me?
I would do that.
Okay.
Okay, so there you go. Got all that? Dan will never miss another meeting.
That's the truth. Don't tell him I'm suggesting.
So do I get to work on True Point?
Yeah,
Are you good with that?
Yeah.
yeah. That's not one that's going to be used for housing at all, is it? To the best of my knowledge. You weren't talking about housing at all for True Point?
No.
Okay, which would be good. Okay, all right. Okay. Anything else, sir?
No.
Words of wisdom? Stay off 30? No?
30.
Michelle? Is that it? Okay, and then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, get up and leave. Thank you so much for being here. Whew. That covered a lot of ground in a little bit of time.
Yeah, that wasn't bad.
Under an hour.
Jen, if you, I mean, again, I don't even know what it's gonna look like, right, to do what we're talking about. But I mean, if you wanna take a drive up and look at True Point, I mean, I'd happy to ride shotgun and let's just drive it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, Alan, we've had some preliminary conversation.
More to come?
That would be about 2 miles south of Syracuse. It's on the south portion of Lake Wapsie.
It's the former golf course.
Yeah, old golf course, South Shore Golf Course.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.